Good, how are you?
It's finally over.
Kellyanne, is President Trump confident that if he declares a national emergency, it will stand up in court?
Well, the president hasn't said he will do that. He said that he is considering it. White House counsel's office is also examining it. And even some Democrats who would prefer the president not do that, would prefer the president not be the president probably, have grudgingly admitted that he does have the authority to do so. The reluctance also, though, Kristen, is that why let Congress off the hook yet again? Congress really has failed to do its job, including the Republican and Democratic-led Congresses. They failed to do their jobs on immigration for a very long time.
What's the likelihood that he does declare a national emergency, Kellyanne? What's the likelihood he declares a national emergency?
I will repeat what he just said, although it was off the record. I'll repeat to you that he is not talking about that at all. He's not giving a likelihood. He's not saying yes or no. But he's made very clear to you and the public last week that he is considering it, and White House counsel's office is looking at it. But the speech will be about many different things.
What's your reaction to reports that 6 immigrants were encountered on the southern border in the first half of 2019 for links to terrorism?
So that number, the 3,755, that number, we're told by DHS, is real. What is not correct is that they were all apprehended or prevented, I should say, at the southern border. It's a number of different ports of entry. So, for example, as you all know, Customs and Border Patrol is also at our airports. So apparently it's airports, ports, the border, other ports of entry. And I think that's the clarification.
Would you dispute? We've seen reports that only 6 immigrants with links to terrorism were encountered at the southern border.
Well, I would tell you is what Secretary Nielsen has said, and Vice President Pence reflected this earlier today as well, which is that at any given time we have a number of terrorists in the hemisphere, and so she does not want anybody to make small talk out of a significant number of terrorists in the hemisphere at any time. But I think the clarification needs to be where they apprehended or prevented at the border as opposed to anywhere else. The Vice President also this morning, and a few of your networks, talked explicitly at a length about special interest aliens, and that's a different matter altogether, but he did address it. I would refer you to his comments because I've been in those briefings with the Secretary of Homeland Security on that topic as well. Of course, because I'm a geek who loves to read, was a pollster, then a lawyer, then a pollster again. I love to still read the old-fashioned way. I was looking at the memos put out by then Secretary Jay Johnson as well on a number of the different issues we're discussing, just to clarify from 2014.
Why should the average American expect the president says is not motivated by politics and desire to Philippines?
I find no Americans to be average, but I take your question for how you meant it. So I think Americans should want to tune in to the first national address by President Trump on an issue that concerns all of us. All of you have me stand here from time to time and ask me as a woman, as a mother. So let me tell you something. As a mother, I'm very troubled that young girls and women are being trafficked. I don't know how many, but I know the number's not 0, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, it bothers me, and I hope it bothers you. I think Americans need to hear from their president, their commander-in-chief, why he sees this as a security and a humanitarian crisis at the border. If we talked about just the drugs alone, a topic I know very well here, and work on this every single day for the president. If we talk just about the drugs alone, if you look at the Axios report from this morning, you will see that the illicit drugs like heroin and fentanyl are pouring over the southern border outside of the 26 ports of entry. And if you looked at just the cost of that, the human cost to Americans, the increase in fentanyl, the increase in meth, heroin, and cocaine coming over the southern border and coming into our communities, as a mother, as a woman, but as a person of conscience, completely in a nonpartisan fashion, I hope you can share the concern that we've got the drugs pouring over the southern border increasingly, these illicit drugs like heroin and fentanyl. And so that itself, we can have this conversation just about the drugs. We can have the conversation just about the human trafficking. We can have the conversation just about the criminals. If you look at the DHS materials that were shared with the media yesterday, I would love for you to screenshot them and send them out because it's government information. And they're saying 17,000 or so people who have already committed crimes they've helped to prevent or apprehend. So these numbers are not 0, and the president looks at his humanitarian crisis at the border, but also the humanitarian crisis on this side of the border when the drugs come pouring into our communities. We lost 72,000 Americans last year, 2/3 of those from opioids. The increasing number, it spikes upward according to the CDC. Just on fentanyl alone, it's 50 times the potency of heroin 100 times the potency of morphine. It's an instant killer for people who ingest it.
When is the president going to meet with lawmakers? When is the president going to meet with lawmakers again?
I know the answer to that. I'm not going to tell you, but he would like it to be this week, and he's available. He's just saying he's been here. He would like it to be this week, but as you know, the Vice President and Secretary Nielsen and a few others, I plan on accompanying them, backbenching, but they are going to meet with lawmakers this evening, and the President is more than happy to meet again with the Big Eight, as they call them, anytime they're ready. He's made that clear all through Christmas and New Year's, over the vacation, last week, this week. We want to make sure that our border is secure and that the government reopens, but they want it to be in the reverse order, which is not really a practical consideration.
Hey, Kellyanne, can you promise that the president will tell the truth tonight? Will he tell the truth?
Yes, Jim, can you promise that you will?
I will.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I'm not the
Am I allowed to mention God to you?
facts problem like you do.
No, but that, Jim, I know that's a cheat. Make sure that goes viral.
Okay.
This is why, by the way, this is why I'm one of the only people around here who even gives you the time of day.
Can you guarantee?
And
that the
let me
president's speech will
get
pass
back
a
in your
fact check?
face, because you're such a smart ass most of the time, and I know you want this to go viral. A lot of these people don't like you. But let me just be respectful to the media at large, as I always am. I explained that was alternative information and additional facts. And I explained it many times. And don't you put it back in my face for all the corrections that your network needs to issue. I was on your network 25 or 26 times in 2018. I'm one of the last people here who even bothered to go on. And the disrespect that you showed to me personally, I'll just look past.
Ma'am,
No,
just asked
and
you if
don't
the
call me
president
ma'am
will be
to
telling
make
the
it up.
truth tonight.
That's
I
why,
just asked
go ahead,
the
please,
president
Mom.
to tell the truth
You said he's meeting with lawmakers tonight. Democrats and Republicans, who's he meeting?
Tonight, the Vice President and Secretary Nielsen will be meeting, I believe it was made public, they'll be meeting up on Capitol Hill with the Republican Conference. But remember, they'll meet with anybody who wants to meet with them. The Big Eight will come back here. I'll let our Legislative Affairs Office take that one. But obviously, the President is always happy to meet on this issue.
Kellyanne, statistics show that actually more suspected terrorists were apprehended at the northern border than the southern border. So why not declare a crisis there? Why the focus only on the southern border?
I went through the whole drug thing, drug crisis that we're having. I know it's understood, but you don't cover it enough compared to 72,000. We basically have an airplane falling from the sky every day filled with people dying from a drug crisis, and we're just going to blase our way out of it.
Mitigate what's happening at the
Be a
northern
smart
border.
aleck.
If this is a situation that's close enough to being declared a national emergency or being considered declaring a national emergency, why doesn't the president support opening agencies that deal with national emergencies?
Say it again.
If we're considering declaring this a national emergency,
Nobody said that. The President said he's looking at it, and he has his team looking at it.
But is he going to consider?
You're getting
Figure out
ahead
which
of him.
president the president had talked
Phone
to
lunch,
previously?
wasn't it?
Did you figure out which previous president Mr. Trump had spoken to previously who said yes, he's
Anybody else?
supported a border wall?
Who's not talking to themselves?
President to make any policy announcements, any changes tonight in his speech.
He may, but he also wants to make sure that the public understands exactly what's going on at the southern border and how we can help with the solutions. There are any number of solutions that have been put forth. The Vice President's made very clear as part of the negotiations. He heard what the Democrats were asking for. Much of that is on page 2, the backside of that particular letter from OMB to Chairman Shelby, and I would commend it to your attention.
Kellyanne, will the president very much decided? Is there any chance
than
he'll
he's already
offer a
said
plan
on
to
this
reopen
issue?
the
Will he say
government?
anything different tonight than he's already said on this issue?
I think the President is going to bring his case directly to the American people. I know you're covering it, but he also needs to cut out the middleman, because there's a lot of misstatement and lies told about him routinely every day, just looking around. And so he needs to make sure that he can get his message directly to the American people. But a lot of this will strike the public as brand new information. I'm not going to get ahead of his speech. I've seen drafts of it, and this is up to him. It will be in his voice, in his words. And I thank you for covering it and for giving
out
Will
which
he offer a
president
path to
is
reopen the
speaking to?
government, Kellyanne? Will he offer a path to reopen the government tonight? A clear path?
The President has made very clear that he wants border security. It's not a campaign promise. It's a solemn duty as the Commander-in-Chief and President of the United States to keep us all safe and secure. And he looks at this as very important. And by the way, you see what he did today. He invited in members of the media, of your industry. They were all there. He had a great lunch, really, very off the record in content, but a really terrific exchange, robust exchange. Questions were asked and answered. The Vice President weighed in. Everybody had an opportunity to ask the President what they wanted to know on this particular issue and a few others. And we would like that. We would like to continue that. I see the Vice President yesterday did the pen and pad with the media. We'd like to continue bringing you information, those who are interested in the information and not curating your own images.
Second longest shutdown in history. What's the message to your workers, Kellyanne, who are concerned about paying their bills?
Well, the president's concerned about them too, and OMB has been talking about some of the mitigation strategies, as have some of the other agencies. They're working on that as well, and the president very much sympathizes with that. He's following this as well, but he wants to make sure that we're all safe. His first and solemn duty is to keep us all safe in this nation, and we're not safe from the drugs. These women are not safe from the human trafficking. I don't know how anybody can possibly deny it. We've had such a massive increase in such a short amount of time from what conventionally was were the people trying to come here illegally, the single male from Mexico, and now of course we increasingly have the family units and the unaccompanied children, and that has really changed the capacity at the border of our agents to be able to deal with that. They tell me that they're the brave men and women at the border. I'm not. I'm standing here with you in the sunshine, in front of the people's house. But the president is listening to them. What do they need? What are the resources they need? They want the personnel. They want the steel barriers. Many of them have suggested that to them. We already have a lot of that built from previous administrations, meaning structures, infrastructure. I know that a Democratic congressman was just asked on Fox News, I'm told, about, well, if you don't want this, would you tear down what's already there? No, we wouldn't do that. Well, I mean, we know that we agree on many of the problems that exist. Nobody can deny it. By the way, I would just say to you, because you don't cover it enough, in that massive drug legislation that passed earlier this year, every single Democrat voted for that, which means they already admitted that we have a problem, because they voted for the STOP Act. They voted for compelling our own U.S. Postal Service to do a better job of stopping the flow of illicit drugs from coming into this country through our own Postal Service. So you've got to believe if it's also coming through the southern border, that the priority is also there. I see a Christopher in the crowd. How you doing? You want to represent CNN in a nice way? Because Jim's trying to make it personal.
He's the upgrade.
Kellyanne, how does a billionaire president relate to people who can't pay their
Pardon me?
I just wanted to ask if Kushner has reached out to congressional Democrats to support the wall being included in budget.
Well, Jared's done a great job being part of the negotiating team, and as he proved very recently with criminal justice reform, a really historic, monumental law that got passed recently in an overtly bipartisan fashion, I should say, that he has great talent in reaching out to many different people who have equity at the table. And we want to make sure that people understand that, like criminal justice reform, like the opioid crisis, border security, our nation's security, is or should be a nonpartisan issue that is met with a bipartisan solution. So we look at that. I'm not going to talk about who Jared talks to. I'll let Jared speak to that. But I just know him at the table as one of the chief negotiators, as designated by the president, and him working with people on Capitol Hill and elsewhere around the country on other major pieces of legislation and actions has benefited this. Yes, has.
Kellyanne,
Pardon?
about the trip on Thursday.